end up submitting an application for that SFOC as well. For the dates, I actually made it December 25th to the end of the year, or to the New Year's anyways, like January 1st, because I don't exactly know when they will approve it, but they have well over 30 days to approve this. The only thing that's, quote, beyond the rules is essentially I want to fly over 122 meters. And as I said, it's a pretty straightforward operation. Fly straight up, fly straight down. So it'd be kind of interesting if I get the panning aerials and stuff like that, just to see how it's like. And at the same time, mainly just to test out the process. I didn't know specifically what they wanted, like for you to send in, so I basically just sent everything at this point. Basically the form, detailed like say maps of where my operation is and all that, so we'll see how it goes. I also attached things like that school certification and all too, which I assumed before that should help in the process, so we'll see. Because that was, again, one of the main reasons why I decided to do it as well. I guess all the news today was related to people trying to change laws and all that. I guess the first ones with all that Hong Kong stuff that people probably heard of. Basically, they had some kind of vote, and people that were in favor of things like what, democracy and stuff, won by like a huge landslide. This one says, not the end. Victoria's Hong Kong pro-democracy candidates vow to press on with demands. Carmen Lau expected the taste of victory to be sweeter. At 24, she had never stood for the office before the district council elections in Hong Kong Sunday. She had reason to think she would win. As a pro-democracy candidate, in the midst of a pro-democracy movement that has gripped the city for more than 5 months, and she had reason to celebrate. Monday, with pro-democracy candidates staging an electoral rout winning 389 of 452 seats, up from just 124 and taking command of 17 of 18 district councils. Holy cow, that's a huge victory, huh? From what I gathered, there was a huge turnout of, I guess, young people as well for the reason of that. It says it was a landmark win fueled by unprecedented 71% turnout that replaced coteries of Beijing loyalists with fresh-faced political neophytes and prompted at least one person to crack open a bottle of bubbly on the streets. So that's kind of interesting, basically just seeing everyone trying for so long, I guess, to make the change that they want. Although ultimately, in the end, you're even left to wonder, will it make a difference? Because there's even people around like China, they say, like for the governments, it doesn't matter. Like they're there to create order, that's their issue. And it doesn't really matter, I guess, in the long run, what happens. They still rule, like their law. Because I know there, one of the complaints was when they did the elections and all that, it was one of those, okay, we'll give you like leaders basically that you can elect, which isn't really, I guess, your choice, and you're given like the choices as opposed to just anyone could be elected. And I guess one of the quotes before, just from reading the news, like from the Carrie Lam, that's her name, it says something along the lines of with all those protests, her analogy was, the situation is kind of like dealing with children or something like that, where when they're making all these complaints, you can't basically just accept it and do what they wish. But then I'm thinking, if it's a democracy, technically, I think it's the other way around. It's not like the people are your kids. It's more like you are their employees. It should be the other way around, isn't it? Like when you elect people in. Whether or not there will be a difference, who knows? Because again, it's basically one of those things where the ultimate people at the top have the decision, right? But I guess it's just interesting to see so many people wanting to make change and trying to do something about it, I guess. And in relations to making change with laws and stuff like that, something around here in the Vancouver area in regards to drones. Apparently they want to ban drones from landing and taking off in Vancouver regional parks. This one says, Metro Vancouver looks at banning drone takeoff landings in regional parks. The fine for a drone taking off or landing without a permit could go up as high as $250. The move would bring the regional district's drone rules in line with the policies that cover provincial and national parks in BC. It is being proactive, said David Levers, Division Manager of Visitor and Operation Services for Metro Parks. Levers says in regional parks, the main concern is the impact of drones can have on animals such as birds. Drone use also doesn't align with regional park goals, poses a safety risk if they're not flown responsibly, and can ruin park users' experience. So one of those things again where they say a drone can, I guess, disturb animals and all that. People just saying, hey, I don't want it because of the noise. Although some of the points that are brought up in terms of flying a drone around, I guess, like a park and stuff, I actually learned it from you guys in the comments, and they actually mentioned about it here as well. It says here, drone use in Canadian airspace is regulated by Transport Canada and Canadian aviation regulations, so Metro doesn't have a say over what happens in the airspace above parks. But Levers said that Metro controls the land base, so it can prohibit takeoffs and landings in parks without a permit, which it plans to do as part of a suite of annual bylaw changes. And it wasn't just drones, there's other stuff they're thinking too in these proposals. It says slacklining and highlining, walking, standing, or bouncing along a suspended line will also be prohibited in regional parks. Metro considers the two activities high risk, and although it doesn't have a formal policy in place, in practice they're not allowed in regional parks. The prohibition will align with the bylaw recommendations from the regional district's risk management officer and field practice. And as I said, it's not final yet, so they'll have a meeting about it. But just in general, I just find it a little silly if you write that, because I've seen many times where it's like a parent with their kid flying like maybe literally like a 50-gram drone or something, little RC cars. Like, what's wrong with that? Although if you actually read some of those bylaws, technically, and I mean technically, it's illegal for people to play tag, like in an open grass field in many cases. And yes, I do mean tag, like what you'd see kids do in school, because in a lot of like say bylaws and stuff, it says you can't do designated activities or sports or whatever unless it's in a designated field. So in that case, technically, if there's no designated field to play tag or whatever it is, then you're breaking the bylaw or whatever. So it makes you wonder in these cases, it's just one of those, they're gonna write it, but then who's gonna actually, I guess, enforce it realistically when people are doing nothing wrong? Because that's actually true. There are people who might get like anal and say, well, that's what's written there, so I can stop you and all that, which is true. But for the most part, I found for stuff like that, just with anything, people generally just go, whatever, you're not doing anything wrong. Because even with a park, like with that designated activity stuff, I see people all the time, they kick like, you know, soccer balls and stuff to people where technically they could be stopped, technically, because it's not in a designated field, as they say. But I think one of the most interesting things about all this is because they talk about how Transport Canada governs the airspace, but then they could prohibit the drone from being taken off or landing in the park, because you guys actually mentioned that. So technically, if you want to fly within the park, you can literally take off whatever or land like from, I don't know, like the sidewalks outside the park, come in, and that would be perfectly legal and all that. So that's something to think about too, which they actually mentioned. And like I said, I actually learned from you guys. It makes me think of that other story, if you guys remember, of that lady in North Vancouver that convinced the board or whatever to ban people from having pigeons and all that just because she personally had an issue with that. So just interesting things that happen in the world where people either lose or gain more rights. See you guys later.